welcome to this session. Thank you all for coming over. I hope I'm audible in the room. All right, cool. AI and generative AI don't need any introduction, this is something that doesn't have to be sold to the boards as well. And that's the good news, but the hard work actually starts after that. And what we thought was we'll focus a lot on how do you use AI, data, generative AI to drive competitiveness and accelerate growth, unlock efficiencies, and build connected ecosystems and the place that companies can create to not only dominate the industry value chain that they operate in, but also create new industry plays by combining strengths across industry verticals and oftentimes even transcending those industry verticals. We surveyed about 1,000 plus business and IT executives. Most of them are customers, but also other companies and prospects, the large size, small size companies, and asked them about their state of AI and generative AI adoption. And what came back was not very surprising on some grounds, but then it had some surprising bits as well. The most important was that only 26% of those companies said that they were satisfied by their AI initiatives in the company. And then when we double-clicked, we found that it was a two-pronged barrier that they were all facing. One was not having a very clear business strategy for how you make use of AI and generative AI to drive outcomes. And the other one was, not surprisingly, data. Not having data in place and in shape for them to leverage AI. What I thought I would do to open this session is to lay down a bit of a framework for us to think about AI and generative AI as a business opportunity, and how do you apply that to figure newer plays for your business and look at how you can drive outcomes through that, and that framework will lead to some of the important building blocks that we all should be thinking about as we think about this journey. And after this, I will invite two of our clients to talk about their story and their journey on AI and generative AI. They are industry leaders in their segments and have used data and AI to create outcomes. And we will share that story or those stories in the session as we go along. So let's talk a little bit about how the entire wave is unfolding in the industry. And if you would really look at the work that all of us have done over past 3 to 4 years, we have primarily focused on setting what we call the digital core, right? Most of the work that we've done is on digital and on cloud. And we led the, in the industry with Infosys Cobalt, which is our brand, to set that foundation and create what we call the newer digital experiences. There were 3 horizons, if you see to the bottom left. One is about driving data-driven enterprise. Easier said than done. It's still a paradigm which is very, very relevant, which is to make data available and accessible to the right set of users with the right level of security at the right time. And most importantly, with the quality that business can trust. And it's a horizon that still continues to play out, but large part of our focus on that was to build data-driven enterprise. The second horizon then was to look at creating new digital experiences. And here's where data was the new buyer frame for the industry and for the company. And the third is what we call data economy. It's a unique point of view from Infosys to think about how you can create AI-driven or data-driven products and services, and then create an ecosystem play to garner new revenue streams, to create new revenue models, new business models, and so on. From the wave of digital first and cloud first, we are now in the midst of the AI era, which is the AI wave. And we believe that it's a combination of these 3 that are going to change the business possibilities, and how you look at driving business outcomes for a business now will be defined on the new 3 horizons. And it starts with becoming AI native, This is where you would think about how you're going to move from building digital core, that is what you've invested in, to now transcending into what we call cognitive core. And this is the cognitive core that is going to open up newer possibilities. But here we also have to think about human-machine collaboration. We have to think about how you get your enterprises data ready for AI, which I think is it's the largest building block that has to be put in place. Now, when I say largest, it doesn't mean that it has to be a big bang approach. It is going to be micro, iterative processes through which we build this, but it's going to be an important part of the journey as you think about this. The second horizon is to rethink business, and this is where you look at business as a platform. The way to think about this is once you set the cognitive core in place, it is this cognitive core that is going to throw a series of transformation as opportunities for business. And you put more learning into cognitive core, the more transformative ideas that it is able to then put. So you can think of now your business as a platform, which has this cognitive core. And this also opens up the possibilities of doing what we call vertical integration. You bring your customers, suppliers, partners in an ecosystem and use AI and generative AI to drive close collaboration, resembling what vertical integration as we know in the industry through acquisitions and other partnerships that take place. And the third is about data and AI economy, which is where you think about what is the competitive advantage that you have as business. And you think about the entry barriers. AI is many ways a leveler of sorts. So it is creating level playing field for new players, and they're going to come and compete with you. When you think about your competitive advantage, more often than not, the answers will lead to your data. And it is your data that allows you to differentiate. And when you think about this at an economy level, you will see that companies will start to collaborate horizontally, not just vertically, which is what is happening in Horizon 2. But here you think about horizontal integration, a retail company talking to a bank or talking to a telecom company, because airlines, the banks, they all have the understanding of their consumers from their own vantage point, and they would want to build a horizontally integrated network to create a data and AI economy in which they can thrive and succeed. To build this, you have to think about your blueprint both in terms of the cloud foundation, which is built through Infosys Cobalt, allowing our customers to drive IT efficiencies, business agility, which is extremely critical, and business innovation. All three are extremely relevant as we think about AI. You cannot have a successful AI journey if business innovation is not enabled on your cloud foundation. If your IT efficiencies are not gained, in order to run with the AI clock speed of what the enterprises need to run at. So there is the foundation layer of Infosys Cobalt, but on the top is the ability to get AI and Gen AI applied to your business across those three horizons that I talked about. But the important building blocks are to look at getting your enterprise's data ready, what is your AI strategy, how you're going to do data and AI governance. And here I want to draw your attention to the fact that the data core that we set in the last 3 to 4 years focused a lot on analytical and historical workloads. You did connect with the real-time systems for different use cases and so on, but to a large extent, the investments that the industry has made, they have made it on the analytical and the historical workloads. With AI and Gen AI, you're going to get into the other expanses of data, and that has to be put under governance, and the blueprint has to be thought about. So machine-generated data, user-generated data, the things that we say and do on emails, for example, are going to be useful for generative AI. It's not governed, right? We could say things that are untrue on those emails. There could be things that are privacy sensitive on those emails. There could be things that are extremely confidential, and you want only a few people in the company to get reasoning and inferencing coming out of those kind of email exchanges. Or it could be videos that you publish or videos that you get from your customers and so on. And you've got to think about how you're going to lay those data fabric as we go through. But Infosys Topaz, powered by Infosys Cobalt, gives a blueprint for running the AI journey across the three horizons to get to the outcomes. And the most important thing is to be able to focus on the business outcomes of accelerating growth, unlocking efficiencies at scale, and building your connected ecosystem. And it is not in a particular sequence, nor is it one important than the other. It is all about your business strategy and what you pick to focus on, and you've got to work backwards from there to see what are the data and AI capabilities that you would need within the organization. So the building block of how you get enterprises data ready for AI, we think of it as a pentagon, where data, of course, is the most important element, and I talked about the other expanses of data that you're going to go to, but you have to think about governance hand in hand with that. So just think about how you are fingerprinting that data. There isn't a solution out there that allows you to fingerprint any kind of data that enters your data estate autonomously, and which is where Infosys, through Infosys Topaz, we have made investments which can fingerprint your data, which can organize your data. It will create different segments of that data so that security, privacy, compliance, ethics, trust can be implemented based on the sensitivity of the data that you're handling. So data and governance go hand in hand. You're looking at ingraining and baking in a lot of these practices and policies into platform. You can't have a human workforce trying to do fingerprinting of this data. As and when it enters, you will see millions of these data objects being created in the enterprises. You have to have autonomous capabilities to do that, which is where platform comes into play. So it's a platform-first approach, and then you stitch people and processes around that and combine that with your ecosystem to then think about running AI and generative AI at scale. So it's a brief of the kind of framework and the thinking that you can put to use for driving your strategy. At this point, I would like to invite our esteemed clients to talk about how they've taken this journey and have delivered significant business outcome. First off, I'll invite Kisha and Nanda from BP to share their stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'll let Nanda take that.
Green and red.
I can't have too many things in my hand. So, hi, thank you, Snell. I'm Keisha Garcia, Vice President for Digital Foundations and Technical Program Project Management and Head of Discipline. Quite a bit, but Nanda?
Thank you, Keisha, and I am Head of Architecture for Digital Foundations and Technical Program Management.
Yes. So, as Sunil pointed out, just to give some context on our journey and where we've been, and just to set the scene for our AI journey, our CTP journey, or our cloud transformation journey, if you will, started over 7 years ago. And with that, our footprint at the time or at the start of that journey was what we would consider mega data centers. We had 8 of them globally. And with the combination of over 108 plus locations globally that had smaller data centers with about 50 to 150 servers within each of those at those locations. So, but a part of our big effort was to make sure that we were able to close those data centers, but also make sure that we were able to move all of the cloud compatible products to the cloud as quickly as possible. And also to modernize and to provide this foundation for the next portion of the transformation. And with that, as of today, we have done thousands of application migrations as a team. And as part of that, where we stand currently is we have closed down 4 of those mega data centers, and we are 2 weeks away from closing down closing down 2 of our biggest data centers that were located in Europe. And they were the most complex data centers that we've had, because they were over 15 plus years old, had a large amount of our more complex applications and products within those data centers, and just was a huge feat. So excited about that. And then the last 2 of those 8, which remain in North America, we will be complete by the end of this our first quarter next year. So with that, not only did this set the foundation for for the rest of our journey. But we also had lots of learnings from that as far as modernizing our processes in our state, getting us more into an agile mindset, agile working with DevOps as well, and then ensuring that we were well on the way with reducing our technical debt. It also unlocked lots of opportunities and potential for data, and also, again, helping to modernize and prepare our staff and get our staff up to date. This was a large effort that was taken on by us and our partners working with Infosys, and it just, again, I think it aged me quite a bit, but it definitely was an accomplishment, and we're still continuing to work. We are now today 95% on the cloud for all things that we could move to the cloud, and we'll continue on that journey, as I said. This also helped to drive and set us up properly for our AI-first approach. Just as it worked for our cloud-first approach, we are looking to focus on that for our AI approach as well. And this has now become one of our 4 priorities that we have from a digital perspective, and that is to be a sector leader by 2030 in AI. So that is a huge challenge. But not only is it a huge challenge, it's an opportunity and it's a necessity for our industry and also for us as a company to innovate and continue to deliver the value that we need to our customer, which again is now set us up very well for the start of our journey, which I'll allow Nanda to take us through the rest of that.
Great. Thank you, Keisha. So I need to do this, I guess. Right. That's a good segue into what we've been doing in the AI space for the last few years. There's a bunch of use cases and examples that we've been working on, as you can see on the screen here. But I'll touch on a couple, maybe 3, just to give you a flavor of the things that we've been looking at over the last few years. One of those is our investment into some AI technology in the subsurface space, for example, within our production optimization area, where we have now the ability to feed things like the platform geology, the geophysics, the history of the project itself, and all this information into the model and allow natural language-based querying that would help our engineers obtain the best information related to that particular asset. For example, I could have a subsurface engineer that could query the information and say, what are the most important factors that impact production in the Gulf of Mexico platform, as an example. And they would, in return, receive what is most optimal based on the patterns developed by this AI technology. Another technology is where we have made an investment in the European market, where there is a startup that we've been working with that allows us to connect our low-carbon assets with the power markets, and that way be able to identify the most efficient and the most cost-effective means to essentially put our energy into the low-carbon market. Again, something that we are beginning to see some good results on, and we expect that to evolve over the next few years. Another one, it's a more recent announcement that some of you may have come across, and that is our partnership with Microsoft, probably not a word I should be saying in this forum, which allows us to be a launch partner for Copilot to launch at an enterprise scale. We are the first in the energy sector to do so. And I think all of this is to demonstrate how much we are committed from an AI standpoint. Again, back to Keisha's point, where we don't see this just as a fancy technology that we want to go after. This is a necessity. We want to deliver business value utilizing AI, utilizing the data science, AI, ML technologies that we have been working on for the last several years. What I will maybe end the slide on is by saying that one of the key learnings, and I think Sunil, wherever you are, you touched on earlier as well, and Keisha, you talked about unlocking the potential of our data platforms, is to get our AI right. We've learned that the number one priority has to be able to get your data right, to get your data sorted, and that is what will help you really explore and exploit the capability of AI. With that, I'll hand it back to Keisha.
Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we were able to talk through was just giving some examples of the modernization that has occurred and what's important from the standpoint of our large products. And so, as I mentioned earlier, our mega data centers had over 15,000 plus servers that we had to get through. And one of the bigger things that we were talking about that I want Nanda to step through is our Wall Street, which was our treasury management system, which had housed over $3 million of our transactions. And that was something that was, again, part of one of the last remaining things that was in our large European data center that we were able to modernize. And it would be good, Nanda, for you to step us through just a bit of what that transformation looked like so that way we understand how we're setting the stage for our AI journey.
Thank you, Keisha. Small correction there. It's not million, it's actually $3.5 trillion.
Thank you, yes.
$3.5 trillion worth of transactions we process through our treasury management system. Wall Street is the name of the product. Essentially, Wall Street has been running in our legacy data centers for well over 20 years on really archaic infrastructure built on legacy technologies. And when we stumbled upon this opportunity, we also identified the opportunity to be able to link this back into what is already a very vast presence in the cloud as far as BP's application footprint is concerned. We moved the application into the cloud, but also that allowed us to now start looking at things like utilizing other sources of data through our ERP systems, for example, and through our payment interfaces, and saying, what does cash flow trend look like for the month of January, for example, versus the month of March? And how do you rapidly scale based on the demand? We now have the ability to look at hundreds of payment interfaces we use to make payments to our suppliers, to our employees, to all sorts of entities out there, and identifying the most efficient and optimal path to do so. Again, Infosys has been a great partner in this particular journey, where we've actually been looking at reporting specifically as well. Some really great work done there in terms of how we can report on how our treasury management system functions and supports the business. I think that with that, I'll hand it back to you, Keisha, to talk about the partnership.
Yes, and so as you mentioned, Nanda, our partnership with Infosys has been critical, and we're going to continue on that journey with that, focusing on the four things that are critical to us, and that's, again, our AI-first approach, and ensuring that we are setting ourselves up well and continuing to transform our products. The next one is also just helping to meet our emissions goals and aspirations and utilizing digital as a catalyst for that. And then also utilizing digital as a catalyst to help to meet our net zero ambitions. And then first and foremost, our priority on safety and security as it relates to that. And most importantly, our people, and helping to develop our skills and capabilities to keep them evergreen for the next generation of skills that are going to be necessary and critical for us to be successful. So that partnership, as I said, is going to continue to drive and hopefully help us to meet our aspirations of being a sector leader in AI, and it's going to be critical and continuing to be critical. The other thing is again, we are excited and going on this journey, and definitely know it's possible with the partnerships that we have that we're going to continue on with. So with that, I think, Nanda, unless you have other things that we may have missed, we will turn it over to Diraj to take us through their journey from Citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you guys are having a great conference this week. I'm Dheeraj. I lead engineering at Citizens Bank, and it's an honor and privilege to be here to share a little bit about our cloud and AI journey. The one thing that is common in this picture is that all these customers are getting financial services or banking services from non-banking entities. And this is just a trend that has continued over the last 2 decades, where when we stand and look back, we recognize that the threat to traditional brick-and-mortar banks is the highest that it's ever been, especially, again, from the non-traditional players. When we think about all that's happening in our industry, in the banking industry, banks have been forced to step back and reimagine their operating models, reimagine how they get services and products out to their customers. If the prevailing rate environment as well as the regulatory environment wasn't enough, we have bad actors that are getting increasingly sophisticated. We have an increase in a lot of fraud attempts. Banks have been straddled with a lot of legacy technology, a lot of tech debt that has been adding a lot of cost pressures. Additionally, the only thing that is changing faster than technology is our customer expectations. I mean, all of us walk around with a very, very smart device in our pockets, and the notion of always-on banking, I want to be able to transact bank when I want, where I want, at a moment's notice, has just been taking root. Now, all of this is enough to drive anybody in banking into depression. But having said that, let me walk you through our journey and how we've been trying to address the headwinds we are facing, the challenges that we've been experiencing in the environment. So as a preamble, we started our transformation journey about 4 years or so ago. And as the previous teams and speakers have also stated, the transformation has to start with some very foundational elements. Foundation in terms of an adoption of incremental delivery, an adoption of an agile mindset, where you can break down the jobs to be done, the problems that you're trying to address, and incrementally take them to your customers. The need to build the muscle for testing and learning as you go, to fail very quickly, and to recognize what is it that is clicking with your customer, and then bring that to market extremely quickly. Additionally, the wholesale adoption of on-demand cloud infrastructure that helps us optimize our cost base has been another strategy that we have adopted. We do intend to exit all of our data centers by 2026 and be 100% cloud-first and cloud-only organization. Obviously, this has to be done safely. This has to be done in the realm of regulation, and obviously in a way that we can stand in front of our customers, in front of our auditors and regulators, and build trust and confidence in our operations. Additionally, there has to be a significant shift in the mindset and the culture of your workforce. As tools, as architectures, as technology paradigms shift, as we get more and more mature in unlocking data that we already have or gathering data from other sources, it's very important that the workforce is equipped to take advantage of all of this. And that's been another pillar of our strategy, where we have upskilled, hired, or reskilled over 1,000 technology professionals, and almost an equal number on the business side to help drive this modernization, this transformation forward. All of this has also opened additional doors for us, other revenue streams where we are able to go to market, go to different markets, different segments that have in the past not been available to us, and essentially drive more value for our shareholders as well as customers. Being a digital-first organization, we can go to all parts of the country without having to invest in opening up brick-and-mortar stores, which obviously, as one can imagine, are very, very capital intensive. So all of this has been the foundation of our journey thus far, and has positioned us to continue to take advantage of the advance in AI, in Gen AI, and other offerings that we see in the marketplace. So who are we? We are Citizens Bank. We are the 12th largest bank by assets in the country, just over 222 billion in assets. We operate out of 14 states, primarily in New England and the Midwest, as well as flowing down to Florida, and about 1,100 branches in footprint. However, outside of our retail banking capabilities and services, we operate coast to coast in all 50 states. And our digital-first approach has enabled us to do that. For us, transformation are centered primarily on three principles. We want to make banking easier for our customers. And for that, there are a few key things. But if you think about banking, A, you should be able to bank when you want, where you want. Number two, we should be able to give you access to capital, access to your money almost at a moment's notice. Three is we need to meet you in your life cycle when you have a need for your bank to step up, to give you advice, to give you services, to help you in those moments that matter. Maybe you're graduating from school. Maybe you're buying your first house. Maybe you have a wedding that you need to plan for. Maybe you need to plan for retirement. And providing that entire, providing services across the entire life cycle of our customers is extremely crucial, A, for us to build deeper relationships, and also B, to not just be the bank that you come to when you want to transact, but be that partner for you through your entire life. And of course, beyond, right? We hear about the generational wealth transfer that's coming, and obviously it's very important for us to ensure that the relationships span multiple generations and not just the current customers. But our principles are generally centered around making banking accessible and easy, so mobile first, making it very simple and easy to use, intuitive. You shouldn't have to think through what you need to do. You shouldn't have to struggle to find what you want. And last, and not the least, but very important, is built in response to what the customer needs. What are their behaviors driving? And this is where data, machine learning becomes extremely important to drive those personalized or hyper-personalized experiences. So I'll double-click on one example that just gives you an indication of our journey and what we have been up to. So let's take a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. All of us probably have been exposed to a HELOC. We may have applied for one in our lives. Today in the industry, it typically takes anywhere from 45 to 55 days to apply and be approved for a HELOC. This is because it's a very manual process, a lot of documentation. You've got to speak to your banker multiple times. A lot of manual appraisals about your property and so forth has to happen. And at the end of it, if you're patient enough, after all these days, you probably will get access to your line. Now, because of this, two things happen. A third of the customers opt for other products, like a personal loan, which obviously comes at a much higher interest rate and much higher cost to the individual. Second is, you are never going to get access to money urgently, in time, when you actually need it. And this makes this product almost undesirable in a lot of cases. What we have done is we have launched a product called Fastline. It essentially removes all the friction from the application and origination process. It provides customers the ability to come to a digital point-of-sale experience. If there are an existing customer, we already know everything about them, and we are very quickly able to determine their eligibility, give them an offer, and essentially give them access to funds. So time to decision and speed to funds is really the mantra there. Also, it creates a regulatory compliant offer that we can stand behind and that we can very easily disclose to the customer as well as the GSEs, or if they play a role here, or even our regulators. What we have been able to do is take the application process and cut time by about 80%. So in just under 3 minutes, you're able to apply for a loan, and in under 7 days, you get approved and funded. So the difference from over 45 days to 7 days. And what's allowed us to do this essentially is unlock the data we have about our customers, in real time connect with external data sources that allow us to verify income, verify creditworthiness. It has allowed us to create a compliant offer and package, as I stated, and present it to a customer in a very digital-first and a mobile-friendly way. We have leveraged a cloud-native application that we have built that essentially has taken advantage of a lot of the cloud-native features that AWS offers. It allowed us to go to market very quickly. It allowed us to test and learn. It allowed us to bring in customer feedback and rapidly iterate and put newer versions out in market. It allowed us to essentially take about 70% of our customers and ensure they're eligible and can be fulfilled through this process. For us, it drove a lot of business value. It drove a lot of outcomes for the bank. Within 2 years, we exited last year as the #1 HELOC originator in the country, operating just in 32 states, not all 50. We are getting to all 50. Our NPS went up 28 points. The cost per loan came down 40%. And in net, it has been one of the largest drivers of business and engagement for us within the bank. Now, business outcomes are great. Now, how do you get there, right? We talked about data, we talked about cloud, we talked about all the digital transformation that we've been driving. And really, for us, they were 3 key ingredients. First was culture and mindset. How do we equip our employees, our colleagues, our partners, working with other partners to bring all the mind share, the thought leadership to bear, to create something compelling. Second was ensuring we have a strong foundation, a strong cloud-first outlook and mindset, so we can rapidly iterate, rapidly put things in market. And third was unlocking data, internal and external. But just unlocking data is not enough. You have to take advantage of the machine. You've got to bring in the models that'll help you and allow you to get to the outcomes that you're focused on. So for us, it started with creating that culture of agility and experimentation. It started with experimenting with the cloud, experimenting with cloud-native features, not just taking what we had in our data center and shipping it up to the cloud, but really starting from a blank sheet of paper. It started with bringing small amounts of data and then larger amounts of data and understanding what is the data telling us about our customer. If you are already a mortgage customer, if you have been with us paying your mortgage every month for the last how many ever months, we already know you. We already know your risk profile. We already know what other relationships you may have with other banking entities. We already know your income. There is no reason we can't come to you and say, hey, we know your property, we know the loan-to-value ratio, we know who you are, here's what we can give you. 1 click, and it's done. It's actually 3 clicks, but we like to call it 1-click HELOC internally. But 3 clicks over a 30, 35-page application is still pretty darn good in my mind. The adoption of agile and automation with CI/CD and all the security scans and checks also allowed us to move very, very quickly. Because again, being a financial product, you have to do this safely. You have to do this with compliance in mind. You got to design for compliance and security. You can't bolt these features later. But at the same time, it needed to be a frictionless customer experience. Moving forward, while we are taking advantage of the cloud and AI as much as possible, Gen AI is more of a recent addition in our roadmaps and agenda. Obviously, everybody is experimenting. Everybody is trying to see what we can do. For us, a few interesting use cases have emerged. HELOC, or real estate lending as a whole, is still a human-intensive exercise. It still requires a lot of documentation, a lot of data, a lot of information relative to the customer, relative to the properties, be ingested and analyzed. And we are looking at ways of leveraging Gen AI to automate a lot of to bring in more intelligence into some of our operations. We also heard a little bit about the co-pilots with CodeGen. We are certainly stepping into that as well to make our engineers and our technology staff a little bit more productive and efficient. And the combination of those two, coupled with driving more intelligent knowledge articles, more intelligent ways of equipping our bankers or our customer service reps so they can support our customers better, respond to their queries faster with more accuracy, is where Gen AI is going to start playing a role for us. So we essentially, as we look forward, if we look forward 2 years what we would like to achieve is, of course, continue to be the #1 HELOC originator in the country. That drives a lot of revenue for the bank, no question. But at the same time, find ways of continuously reducing friction in the customer experience. And that can only be done by continuing to unlock data and making use of the models that we have or newer models that might come, so we can specifically target our customers, our high-propensity customers, and ensure we are giving them an offer that they cannot refuse. Also, driving a lot of the underlying tooling to enable our colleagues as well as our bankers to just be more productive. Ultimately, we are on a path of moving from being the bank of our grandparents to being the bank of our grandchildren. And cloud and AI certainly are key ingredients, along with talent and culture, to make that happen for us. Thank you so much once again for hearing our journey. With this, I'll hand it off to our Infosys colleagues again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dheeraj, and I think it's pretty impressive in terms of what you are doing at Citizens Bank, and happy to also say that we are part of the journey. We are actually doing a lot of cloud and data work for you. I think I want to first start by sort of summarizing. I think my current part in this session is to summarize what we have learned from all of you, and I'll start with Dheeraj. I think it's very impressive as to what Citizens Bank is doing, right? In fact, when we talk to our customers and when we actually tell them about what is this whole sort of huge messaging around AI or Gen AI in general, ultimately it boils down to use cases and what's the impact that you're making on your customer. So HELOC is a very great example of that, right? In terms of how there has been significant improvements in terms of doing the work which used to take over 45 days to bringing it down to seven days, right? I think that's a very great, it's a great use case. And essentially the way this can be done is there are certain basics that we need to put in place, which is what Sunil started with, right? So when we actually launched our Navigate Your Next strategy for our customers way back in 2018, we said that you should start educating customers to think digital, right? I think it all starts with starting to think digital. And when you start thinking digital, you have to have a robust technology foundation, which is what Keshav was alluding towards, right? In fact, if you do not have a robust technology foundation, which is a core infrastructure network, basically taking a cloud-first approach, having secure by design or security embedded in the design, I think that's the most important thing. And when you do that, and when you have to adopt cloud, you also have to modernize your tech landscape, which is where the whole legacy part comes into play. And there was a great example that Keshav gave about one of their applications, which actually was transformed, and it was basically modernized to leverage. I think one key thing that I also heard Nanda talking about is the use cases. I think he referred to 3 or 4 use cases, but I think ultimately it's all about use cases. AI is not about doing another technology project, but it's about the use cases that you can identify to see how we can make an impact on the business or on the customers, on the overall reliability and sort of stability of the environment itself, right? I think that's the thing. In fact, if you look at what we have been doing at Infosys, when we said digital first, and we started talking about digital to our customers, we said we should basically have a robust technology foundation. That's when we launched Cobalt. So Cobalt is our cloud brand. So all our offerings of cloud are under this brand called Cobalt. And essentially Cobalt does 3 things, right? One is focuses on IT efficiency, which is mostly around cost takeout, efficiency, reliability, stability, creating an elastic global compute for scale up, scale down, fail fast, learn fast kind of models. So that's the first part. Second is these industry use cases, which can specifically focus on bringing business agility. And the third one is by using our platforms, creating and co-creating innovation for our customers, right? So that's what Infosys Cobalt focuses on. So essentially, the value proposition of Infosys Cobalt was all about creating and delivering business outcomes, right? So that was what we did with Cobalt. Fast forward 2023, we launched Infosys Topaz, which Sunil leads and runs for the company. And this is all about, now that you are thinking digital, you have a robust technology foundation, how can you become AI first and start accelerating the value that you can create for your customers, right? So that's essentially what Topaz is. So in fact, Infosys Cobalt and Topaz both come together, and that's the value and that's the power of what Infosys brings to the table. So I think I will just leave by saying that essentially there is a lot of buzz, there is a lot of conversation around Gen AI. Just like once upon a time, and even today, for example, cybersecurity is a boardroom conversation. Even Gen AI is a boardroom conversation. So I think nobody can ignore that. In fact, when I've been attending AWS reInvent for many years now, since last year, they have just forgotten the word cloud. They only talk about Gen AI. And this year, pretty much, they have only spoken about Gen AI. So I think both of them will coexist, and I think getting back to basics also is very critical. Last thing I want to also call out is one of our offerings that we recently launched, which is very critical, by the way, is getting the enterprises ready for data, with their data, right? Because I think while everybody wants to do Gen AI, everybody wants to do cloud, but focusing on data also is very critical. So that's another thing. So keep looking at Infosys, and we'll keep launching these new offerings, and we'll help you to sort of, not just deliver business outcomes, but also accelerate creating value for your customers. So that's my summary, and thank you again for coming.